these people who are now behind the computers, protecting companies, those people who actually are like, yeah, there's a DDoS attack. And you're like, okay, so these are the guidelines we should follow. Then they're like, just give me a minute, 3, 4, and we are back on business. Yeah, the reason I mentioned DDoS is this morning I was dealing with one. So it's a nice day, very nice day. Okay, so I hope we have enough chairs. So I'm gonna invite first panelist, Bright Gameli from Xetova. I think they will introduce themselves better when they come here. Anthony is here. Yeah, Anthony, yes. Hey, suits. And then we have the goddess of war. Do you know who's the goddess of war? Athena. Where is Athena? Oh yeah, she is. Yes, this is the goddess of war. You hear what wars she's been battling. John Saruni from Kenik. I don't know if he's here.
Yes, I'm supposed to be appearing online. I don't know how audible I am.
He's going to eat the lasagna. Oh, he's coming. Okay, cool. He'll come. Oh, he's online. Okay, I don't know how we proceed from there. Okay, all right. My favorite company, William Makatiani, is he around? You didn't know Serianu is my favorite company. They do amazing stuff. It's good to have those questions ready for SMEs and what amazing work they're doing. Yeah. See, they know each other. Man, do you know them? We have Philip from ICTA. I want to say ICTA. No, he's not here. Okay. And then our last minute person, we had to add somebody last minute, John Mutama from Infoblox. There we go. These guys are the ones dealing with DNS security now and then. Yeah. So, oh yeah, we have enough chairs. I like what they've done here. You see what they've done here? Yeah. Oh, you have to insist. Okay. Sit between the god of war, the goddess of war. Okay. All right. I'm going to start with the side because I like Serianu better. And they can do a better introduction and then we can go all the way. Yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. Smile a little bit. Where's the energy now? Anyway, my name is William Makatiani from Serianu. We're a Pan-African cybersecurity company, and it's a pleasure to be here this evening. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. John Mutama is my name. I work for a company called Infoblox. So our focus is security through DNS. So it's a pleasure to be here talking to you and hope we can share a few things as we go. Thank you.
Judy KYM.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Anthony Muiyuro. I work for KPMG, Director for Cybersecurity and Privacy. The other hat that I wear is the President of ISACA Kenya chapter. So as ISACA, we're in the business of building talent. So we certify our professionals, some of the certifications that Judy mentioned. So we stand behind that. Pleasure.
Good afternoon, everyone. That was quite an introduction. My name is Athena Morgan. I work with an organization called ICMEC. It stands for the International Center for Missing and Exploited Children. We deal in awareness creation, prevention, investigation, and reintegration of children victims of online sexual exploitation, abuse, missing, and trafficking children. Thank you.
How do you remember your title? Yeah, to remember. I got lost on the second word. Hi, my name is Bright. I currently CTO of a company called Xetova. We do data science as a service. But the other hat I wear, which I'm always proud of, is Africa Hackon. I'm the founder of Africa Hackon, a collective that has been training young people in cybersecurity for the past 9 years now. Thank you.
All right, thank you. As you can see, as mentioned, a clap for our very amazing panel. That was quite an introduction. Yeah. So I have this is some very interesting conversation we're about to have here. Business, DNS Security, Anthony here, ISACA, KPMG. Amazing work you guys are doing. God of War and Bright, of course. Yeah. So I'll have a quite comprehensive question for them, and also feel free to shoot whenever you shoot a question. Yeah. So first question to all my panelists: why do you think DNS security is such an important thing today?
I mean, my assumption is you understand what DNS is. So if you think about the route you take to go somewhere, and there's only one route, which is coordinated by someone. When that route is broken, you can't do much, yes? So DNS is very important because it allows you to go places. And when you think about trust, you really can't build trust without knowing where you're going. So the whole idea around DNS really is being able to say, if I go out and I call Fidelis, for example, I don't know how many Fidelises are here. How many Fidelis? There's only one. Of course, you lose the trust, yes? But if I say Fidelis Muya and Fidelis stands up and it's him, then I can trust that next time I show up and I call Fidelis, it's him who'll show up. And I think that's how DNS works. I think it's very important because there are a lot of, I think 80% of the people using the internet, 80% of the people using the internet don't actually know where they're going. So if that is the type of individuals you're working with, then you need to make sure that then the structure works. If you have maps on a road that lead you to Nakuru or lead you, if you're in Lagos, to lead you to Abuja, and you find you took the wrong, we went to Port Harcourt, you have a problem, yes? I think that's the core of DNS as a system.
I like that. Yeah.
Okay, so if you think through what happens on your enterprise networks today, you will come to the conclusion that a huge percentage of your traffic starts off with a DNS query. So if it's outbound requests to the internet, if it's an email communication, there is always a DNS query that starts off that conversation. So DNS is a critical fundamental service in as far as your enterprise business is concerned, in as far as your day-to-day communication is concerned. If I can't think of anything around the day-to-day operations of an enterprise right now off the top of the mind that does not start off with a DNS query. So in as much as it may seem like a small component in the larger scheme of things, right now people are talking all kinds of technology, blockchain, there's all these nice critical things that are coming out there. You guys know the terminologies a lot better. DNS still remains that critical fundamental component that, once not functioning well, leaves your business crumble. So building security around that protocol is important. And the strangest part about it is people have acknowledged, when I say people, I mean the bad actors, they have acknowledged the criticality of this service, and they have determined that they can compromise your business by attacking either your infrastructure or the actual communication around that protocol. That's why it's important for us to pay attention to DNS security. So I hope that's what we'll get out of this discussion, but yeah, as a quick introduction to that. Thank you.
I think I want to take a different route. I think DNS security can be embarrassing. How many of you agree with that? I don't think you're April 14th, 2013. Does that ring a bell to anybody? I don't think you remember. That was when Kenya was embarrassed on the internet, when we had about 100 websites that were hacked. I don't know if you remember that. I think it was anonymous, but there was a different group that came out. 100 websites hacked in a few minutes. Hacked, it was basically DNS hack. A DNS hijack where websites were being redirected. That was embarrassing. It made Kenya look like we don't have cybersecurity professionals to actually be able to help to do anything. Now, apart from that, I will not mention which company, but it was really big during COVID, that the DNS was hacked and a lot of people's accounts were being compromised right here for Kenya, but I think that system was actually being used the whole of Africa. That was quite embarrassing. So I just wanted to just take a different route of what I think DNS security is. It can really embarrass you as a company, as a global organization. Imagine if somebody goes to your website and they redirects to a pornography website, because that has been happening to a lot of Kenyan companies. And if you think it's difficult to actually identify websites that have DNS security issues, government website, I think the previous panel were talking about that. It doesn't take that much time. All of you can do it right now, and I can guide you. I wouldn't do that, but I'm just saying, just to give a perspective of that.
All right, and I think maybe just to also add to that perspective, you see, basically what DNS would be, in a very simplified way, is this is pretty much the phone book, right? So if you're looking for an address for your friend, where do you go? You go to your phone book in your phone, right? So in the internet, the DNS is similar to that. So if you have the wrong one, because one of the key things that attackers do, like particularly what Bright has mentioned, someone can inject and reroute. You're trying to call someone, let me use that analogy, but then there's a different number. So what you end up doing is calling the wrong person. And like you mentioned, it's something very, very easy to do. And when you talk about some of this kill chain, when attackers are trying to particularly perform some of this, big, large scale attacks, normally you'd find that those are some of the things they normally try, because you see how computers would ideally communicate is through IP addresses, right? And that be it IP4, IPv6, you find that computer readable number is ideally what that DNS has. So it's important that it's protected, because you term it as a crown jewel, a very important asset in the grand scheme of things. And that is why its protection and even just building that awareness on what needs to be done becomes extremely important.
And to wrap it up, I'd like to agree with what everyone has said and add on to that with a scenario that in a child's perspective, now us as adults, we are much more perceptive, I am assuming. But if your child is online and they think that they are looking at their research work for school, but in real sense, they're selling their data or they're compromising themselves in one way or another, then that is a confidence that we have in the critical infrastructure, which is the DNS. And that is why DNS security is important, because if we do not protect it, if we are not aware of the threats against it, then not only are we as adults susceptible to being defrauded online, but also children are likely to even to face greater harm on the internet platform.
Thank you. Thank you very much. To follow up on that, John, maybe you can give us some of the trends within your organization that you've been seeing when it comes to DNS-based attacks.
Okay, thank you for that question. So I'm happy with the general consensus that DNS security is a critical component in how we do things. I was hoping one of the panelists was going to disagree and say that it's not critical, but we're all on the same page. So that would have made for a nice argument. But let's look at, we've all looked at, how we can maybe deface a website, or maybe find a way of blocking certain communications and so on and so forth. But one of the trends that caught my attention, especially when I started this journey at Infoblox, was the fact that DNS can actually be used for exfiltration and infiltration of data. So think through a scenario whereby you have implemented the appropriate controls that you have in your infrastructure, but someone utilizes the weakness that is this DNS protocol and is now able to, remember the Bright just talked about how websites were defaced. You find that it's actually possible for me to insert certain content into your infrastructure using this port 53. And that's not the worst part. People who are talking about things like confidentiality, the CIA tried integrity. Imagine being able to exfiltrate files. So you've implemented all these data loss prevention controls and so on and so forth, but someone just comes in and uses DNS as a mechanism to exfiltrate files. So for me, that has been one of the most scary, aspects once I discovered this whole, when I started my journey in as far as security through DNS. So our messaging is always, let's look at how we can control that, because it doesn't take much for you to
use DNS to infiltrate and exfiltrate. If you talk to some of the guys that do penetration testing today, they'll tell you that when you start off the journey of penetration testing in an organization, you look out for areas of weakness. So you start off with the protocols that you know people must access, maybe HTTP, and you try and see if you can compromise that. The next thing that they do is look at DNS, because how many of us are operating infrastructures where you have blocked DNS communication 100%? I don't think there's any of us who's doing that. If you look at the way we have set up our infrastructure, DNS is allowed to communicate on all our setups. So by that fact alone, it's actually possible to infiltrate and exfiltrate data. So that's one of the trends that we have seen, and something that I feel caught my attention, and I think should also be a consideration for the guys in the room. Thank you.
Well, when you talk data, we think oil, think money, think hackers. Anyone else head goes like that? Yeah, everyone. Okay. So maybe now to Serianu, with this kind of attacks, DNS-based attacks, how does Serianu actually help, small, medium-sized businesses to actually be able to handle, being capacitate them to actually be able to handle such kind of attacks or be prepared for such kind of attacks?
Okay. So John mentioned the issue of DNS tunneling, where you see traffic on port 53, but it's not really port 53. So we've actually had a case where somebody was compromised using that particular port, and these people are going in and targeting the mobile banking server. So it's gotten to a point where you need to be able to build, and there are different tools. You've heard of DNS Sec. So there's quite a number of encryption capabilities you can put in place. A lot of them are open source. There are a lot of publicly available, freely available tools that you can be able to build, especially for the smaller ones. For the big organizations, you really have to figure out, and I think that's where now Infoblox comes in, especially for the biggest. But there's a way of securing that communications. There's a way of having an authority DNS server within the organization, so that when you communicate, it's only communicating to that server. We've seen cases, I'm sure some of you, if you're setting up servers, you've seen 8.8.8.8, yes? What does 888 mean? Which one? Yeah? Google, yeah? Now, what if you show up one day, everyone else uses 188 and you see 192.445? Something is off. And in a lot of the financial institutions, when these attackers go in, first of all, they will change the communication and do that. So the one thing we do is for every communication, if we ever see for network traffic monitoring, if you ever see a .53 going to an unauthorized DNS server, then you know there's something. So that is something you monitor. There are encryption. There's things like DNS inspect. There are quite a number of tools that you can use for those. The bigger challenge is the service providers, the bigger service providers. And if you think about the history around denial of service attacks, you see around DNS attacks and all that. That's where now we need tools. You need tools that can be able to detect and stop, and the likes of Infoblox, there's Cloudflare, there are all these other tools that you can use to do that. And literally, as much as we might not be the ones deploying those tools, we'll bring in the likes of Infoblox or bring in other tools that you can use to address that issue.
Okay, thank you. With such attacks like DNS security being on the high rise, we have social engineering. It was weird. I saw the number went up by 486% for just Kenya this year alone. That's how much social engineering attacks have gone up. Just wondering, this is for Bright, do you think we are capacitated as a country to be able to handle such attacks, on a practitioner's point of view? Do you think we have the right people? Are we capacitated by the government, by, private sectors here?
If you look at this room, thank you for that question. If you look at this room right now, the kind of cybersecurity experts you have here, 5 or 6 years ago, it was not the same, right? I think we've really advanced. I can tell you for free, when I started my internship at Cellulant, William was the first to train me on cybersecurity governance. And I was like, what is he talking about, right? It wasn't a technical presentation. It was about, I thought cybersecurity was all about hacking and everything. And he showed me a different side. And I was like, oh, I need to go back and I need to go back to class. So a few years ago, where we used to be and where we are right now is different. I think there's a lot of people right now who are getting more skill set to be able to actually protect infrastructures and services or systems in Kenya. I see Most of the WhatsApp group that we're part of right now has hundreds of people, young people. And I'll give a typical example. We had a competition last week, right? A Capture the Flag challenge. For those who don't know what the Capture the Flag challenge is, basically we're setting up an infrastructure which looks like a real company for people to attack it legally. There were about almost 12 teams. Each team has 3 members. One of my mentees called John Collins. John Collins, his team was number 8 for 8 hours. And John Collins couldn't start at the beginning. Why? He didn't have electricity, right? So he started 8 hours late. Well, when he joined, he became, in less than an hour, his team became number 1, and they were stuck on number 1 for the next 12 hours till the competition was over. They won. This is a 17-year-old who dominated. Actually, every CTF that we ever have in Kenya, this kid always wins. 17. Now, if you look at us right now, I think all of us on this panel right now, we can't do what John Collins is doing. But if you look at the kind of skill set that we are building, that we've been doing Africa Hack on meetups, going to schools, there's a new breed of cybersecurity engineers who are coming up. And I think we just need to be able to have the right guidance. And those who are now hiring this kind of skill set need to understand that we don't have to always necessarily look for all the certifications that you can think about. Some of these kids don't have any certification, but they can prove that they know something, but they need the guidance from the eldest, the older people, sorry to call it that, but or the more mature in the industry, for them to be able to apply the skill set the right way. So are we ready for a cyber attack? Personally, I don't think Kenya is ready. I think we are ready in the terms of we have documented procedures and ideas of being able to actually protect ourselves or defend. But if you say practically, I'll say no. Why? I did a research, my PhD research was to see how ready will Kenya be for a cyber attack. I was able to compromise this country to a level which I tried to submit that report. It was not taken lightly. Ethically, right? I mean, I got hold of a telecommunication network. I got hold of over 80,000 account details, 35,000 Wi-Fi passwords of one of the companies. Until now, as we speak, there's so many government systems that even some of the payrolls are actually leaking on the internet. So if government systems are still having payrolls and ERPs leaking right now, how come are we ready? But we keep on having the conference. We keep on having this conversation. What are we doing about the National Cybersecurity Master Plan that has been launched? Yes, it's been launched. It's nice. It's a nice document. What are the actions after that? So personally, I think we're not ready because we keep on coming up with documents, but we are not implementing some of them. But there are other works happening in the background. I mean, I saw Serianu and KBA, the Cyber Shuja program. The number of people who came out of that, the kind of things they're doing. One is Fraser. Fraser is at the back there. Just raise your hand. Fraser's working with us right now, and Fraser is amazing. I don't have to tell him what to do. He asks questions and he does it himself. Now, if we can keep on doing that and breed new cybersecurity engineers and host conferences that we are applying what we have been developing, then I think we'll be a step ahead. And also the transparency. As I was hoping to see CA on the bench, where we can see some of the things that they're doing to make sure that we can have some sort of transparency. People ask, how are we protecting the country? And we want to get answers. Sometimes I wanted to get that to come out from them.
Wow. Who took that personally? It's okay. It's okay. We can't see you. The opaqueness of this side. We can't see you. All right. So first we scare you, then we give you the solutions. Okay. So to Anthony, apart from DNS, security issues, the social engineering that are very high, what other trends are you seeing when it comes to, you're in KPMG, by the way, very, very nice. What current trends in the country are you seeing when it comes to cyber attacks, some things like copyright infringement? Give us some insights.
Okay,
Yeah.
and thanks, and happy to hear the insights coming from Bright and the rest of the panel. By the way, Makatiani happens to be our senior. So I think he's
Yeah.
And that is what we need to do. And I like what Bright is emphasizing. The new generation of cybersecurity. We need to be very intentional to nurture them. They will not come in the suit. Some of them, their hair is off, and they want to work, weird hours of the night. So we have to accommodate them, because by the end of the day, what we are looking for is the skills. So even as ISACA, we have a boot camp that we normally run, CSX, and I can tell you, we are getting phenomenal people from such cohorts. I've personally hired them because they do not have any certifications. Some of them actually, you find they may not really even have graduated in terms of getting their degree, but can they get the job done? Yes. So what are we saying? We need to explore other routes of hiring. Now to answer your question. I think in my honest view, and based on some of the research that we did, we recently launched our Africa Cybersecurity Survey as KPMG. So you can visit our website, we've published it there. And we got a lot of response from even Kenya as well. So it was Africa-wide, across many countries, West, East, and also Southern side. But in Kenya, some of the things that really stand out would be, number one, ransom. Yeah. And that's a big one, in a very big way. And in the morning earlier, I spoke about the history of ransomware, right? And in my honest and humble submission, I would say ransomware is here to stay. If you ask William, he will tell you the same thing. Ask Andy, ask Bright, ask anyone in this room, they're going to tell you the same thing, because they've pretty much cracked the economics, yeah? And it's a money game. It's very easy to monetize ransomware. In fact, you don't really need to be as technical to develop even a ransomware. We have different models such as RAS, yeah, and it's not Rasta, it's ransomware as a service, right? So you just go online, go to dark web, get someone, and you guys can enter into a revenue share agreement. You get 30%, identify the target, and I'm not giving anyone ideas. I'm just generally just mentioning how it's done, yeah? Yes, so you go there, go to, some of those charts. I'm not going to mention. Dark web, if you don't know, see Bright and I will tell you how it's done, or even William. But then, of course, once you get to those syndicates, and they're very organized, so you identify a target. For instance, if my target is KPMG, there's something I need to do, right? But then, of course, they have the build already, the ransomware ready to go. So I just need to help them do at the end, which is going to come to my second point. And then, of course, once it's successful, it's what we call spray and pray. You spray it to as many people as possible. And what you need to do is just wait for the money. And it comes in Bitcoin. And that's why it's extremely lucrative. In fact, we even have interesting cyber careers that have come out of that. I have a friend in Silicon Valley that I'm going to be meeting next week. What he does is he's a ransomware negotiator. He's a ransomware negotiator. So when you're hit with a ransom and and of course your victim has told you pay this amount of money, get that guy. And then of course he's going to negotiate it down, and then you pay him his money. Is he making money? Oh, a lot of it. In fact, one of the things I want him to teach me is how to do it. I'm being honest, man. You have to be ambitious. You have to be ambitious. That's good money. The guy can make a killing in one attack. So it's very legitimate, and it's a new career. That's why I think some of the new career fields we need to look at ransomware negotiation. You may not be technical, maybe God bless you. So there is hope for you. Yeah? There is hope for you. Yeah. So ransomware is one, and I think that's the biggest of the reasons I mentioned. The other one is very good friends with me and collaborate on many of the things. Normally issue locally reports, and one of the cases they mentioned in the last one, where they 454 million detected attacks. So the second one would be like the US attacks, right? And these are things that KPMG will tell you. The more they do, the more malwares and all that. In fact, speaking of which, there's a board, a microfinance. That we were making a presentation on the cybersecurity report, and guess what they told us? That we want you guys to present this in Swahili. So imagine saying malware in Swahili. Yeah. And I have a very funny colleague. Do you know what he did? He recorded the conversation. Now, my Swahili is not very good. So he told me, now this is a ransom, Anthony. If you're not kind to me, one day I'll release it. So, but those are some of the incidences that you normally see, but they're very, very common. But then insider perpetrated threats. You know, some of the case studies, or rather even horror stories you'd hear, and even someone like William that does a lot of monitoring, you'll figure out that most attacks, most cyber security attacks, particularly the ones that are able to be monetized, always 90% of the time, always have an insider in it. Yeah. There's a story of was he a church elder, William? Was he a deacon? Yeah. There's a story William was telling us that one day a deacon that was a known pastor, you know, so he ideally did a fraud and they stole 40 million. So when they did the forensic, they found that it's actually that guy. And what he said is that, you know what, pia mchungaji ako na macho. Munanilipa 40,000 and I'm seeing a lot of money moving. Because again, opportunities sometimes can create thieves. And that is that is actually the intricacies of these human factors. The predictability is very, very low. You can have someone who started out very, very well, but then they end up being robbed just because they had an opportunity. There is a story, a mutual friend of Bright and I, he's going to remain unnamed. I'm not going to mention his name, but he joined a bank as a system admin, and guys reached out to him via LinkedIn. What did they do? They gave him life-changing amount of money, the offer, and told him, what you need to do, just take this USB, and go plug it where the core banking server is. Now, let me give you perspective. This is a young joiner from university. He's being given an amount equivalent to 5 million Kenya shillings. He's being paid around 50,000 shillings. Do the math for me. And what is being told is that all you have to do, just go, plug this in, walk away. Yeah? The reason why we're still friends with that guy is because he chose the ethical route and reported that issue. And that is one of the many that are not told about, because the ones we do not hear, guess what happens? They actually do it. So that is the biggest challenge that we are facing as an industry. Human factors, particularly malicious people that collaborate, with some of these hackers. And the stories can go on and on and on. And such is why I say the biggest issue we have to worry about is that, the human factors.
Oh, thank you. That's quite comprehensive, which reminds me, I realized I was assuming when ransomware attacks happen, it's a very sophisticated game. And then recently did a dark web forensics. And I saw the way these people sell data is the way you buy from Mama Mboga, yeah? This skooma, I want it for 10 bob. No, I have 7 bob. No, I can give you 8 bob. That's how they actually sell your data on the dark web. Yeah. People actually, it was a very beautiful marketplace, by the very beautiful. Yeah.
We are actually holding the Africa Hack-On workshop in December. We'll send the date out. We're actually holding a masterclass for 4 hours on how to create a ransomware. So please look out for that. No, it's for educational purposes. Ethically, we want to teach you so that you can actually be for 4 hours straight. Come with your laptops, come with your labs, because we want to teach you how to create a ransomware, to know what to look for, or when you're reverse engineering for threat intelligence and the like. So do look up. Okay,
thank you. Happy Cybersecurity Month. All right, and to our goddess of war, we'd like to know, as a cybersecurity expert, in the child protection area, maybe you can give us some trends that will scare the parents here and us who have small siblings at home. We would like to understand in terms of trends when it comes to child protection, things that you're actually seeing as an expert in this field.
All right. Thank you for that. And thank you, Anthony, for what you just mentioned, because I was supposed to start with the question that in cybersecurity, what is usually the weakest link? Who can tell me?
The people.
The human factor, right? So Anthony has mentioned the human factor from a malicious perspective. That's someone who intentionally goes out to bring down a company or a system. But also we have the human factor as a weak link, but out of ignorance, out of greed, and just by the fact of being human. And this especially happens among the children. So how many are parents? How many have children in their care? Anyone? That's good. So how many of you share your phones with your children? You have a game, Candy Crush, Snake. No one. Really? Oh, definitely you do. So when you gave your child that phone, did you tell them that if an email pops up on the notification, don't pull it down, or don't take a screenshot like had been mentioned earlier? You know, for them, they might be, oh, let me just take a shot and show my daddy about it. Did you talk to your child about that? How many did? Ah, good for nice. You did too. Okay, so most of us don't do that. And that's mainly because we don't think that children can be the source of harm. And most of the time, children are the source of harm because of ignorance, because we have left them to their own devices and their own means when they're on the technological platform. So when it comes to domain name abuse, there are two common trends. We'll have domains that have been created specifically to attract children's attention. So you'll find, for example, there's a site like Barbie.play. Who's Barbie? Who knows who Barbie is? Barbie is a doll, right? So if your child says Barbie.play, what will they think it is? It's a harmless site. It's a game. It's somewhere you'll go look for dolls and stuff like that. But that site ended up being an online exploitation site specifically for sexual exploitation of children. So that is a domain name that has been used specifically to attract children, but for the purpose of abuse. The other way that domains can be abused for children, against children, is if they are accessible to children, yet their content is not child friendly, right? So let me take a very extreme example. Let's talk about Pornhub. Who can access Pornhub? Anyone? It just asks you, are you 18 years old? Can you say yes? Can a 10-year-old say yes? Yes, and they access the content. So that site was not necessarily meant to target children, but it has content that is harmful to children, and it is accessible to children. So those are the two main ways that you might find domains are putting children at threat, and not just children, but even us as adults, because the moment children get involved in this, they become victims of phishing, they become victims of online sextortion or extortion and blackmail. If they share content about themselves, if my child today gets into a site where he or she is asked to share, for example, naked photos of themselves, and they do that, and then tomorrow the person who they were sharing it with says, ask your daddy or your mommy for their bank details. Or if you do not do that, I'm going to share your content with your classmates. What do you think this child will do? They'll definitely do it. They'll find a nice way of talking to you and I'm twisting you. And if you're the kind of parent who actually trusts your child with some of this information, they're going to give it out. So not only have they become a threat to themselves, but also a threat to you as an individual, as a parent, and even your organization, depending on what information is asked of them. So we work closely with the IWF. The Internet Watch Foundation launched a reporting portal in Kenya in 2021 in conjunction with the DCI, Anti-Human Trafficking and Child Protection Unit. So the IWF portal, what it basically does, if you go to IWF Kenya, you will be able to report sites that are sending content, especially sexual in nature, that are a form of abuse to children. And in their report that they released last year, in terms of domain name abuse, there's a 66% increase in creation of new unique domains, specifically targeting abuse of children and sexual exploitation across the world. 66% increase of new domains. Out of these, we had 168 top-level domains, 82 generic top-level domains, and 86 CCTLDs. All these were created with the intent of sharing content and luring children for abuse on their online platform. So that begs the question, as a domain name registrar or as a domain name registrant, what are you doing to ensure that the people who are buying your services or the people who are using you as a service provider are not using that platform to abuse children and also to expose them to threats on the internet platform. And also, I'd like to point that ICANN has RAA guidelines that specifically say that all domains under ICANN are supposed to report for all forms of abuse. But the disclaimer is, if the abuse is not sexual in nature, you can report to the domain name registrar. But if the report or the abuse is sexual in nature and especially against children, you're not supposed to report to the registrar. You can flag it off, but don't share the link. So for example, I could share with Bright and I'm like, hey, check out this link. It's about exploitation of a 7-year-old child. That is actually illegal, if you didn't know, because it causes what we call re-victimization, because the more you share, the more the content is out there, the more the content is downloaded into other people's devices. And that means even if a site is pulled down, the number of laptops, phones, clouds that have that content already backed up in it means they can reshare it at any other point in time. So when it comes to reporting of domains that are especially sexual abuse and sexual in nature against children, you are advised to report either to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children, which works very closely with law enforcement in different countries and actually receives seconds reports of all forms of abuse against children online. And also in a country like Kenya, you can also use the IWF portal to report forms of abuse against children. So basically that is what we are dealing with right now.
Wow. Ooh. I also wanted to point out that when you asked who has children here, and people raised up, if your child is 30, I don't think that's what, are we counting 30-year-olds? Yeah. And say, okay, do you teach your children about, these apps? And you raise your hand and your child is 30. I know they're still your children, but I am not sure what age group we are looking at. Do you mind clarifying that for us, or what age group are we looking at?
I think it depends, because some people prefer introducing their children to technologies at the age of 3. Others at 12, others at 18. But for me, the disclaimer would be, as soon as your child shows interest, maybe you should start introducing them to it and walking the journey with them. Because why? If I had a 7-year-old, if my 7-year-old son came and asked me, what's Google? How does it work? And I'm like, that's something for adults, don't ask. What will they do? They'll go to the neighbor, right? Or they'll go to another age group and start asking. Who tells you that that person they go to ask will tell them the truth, Or let's talk about something more controversial in the African culture. If your child comes and asks you, what is sex? Because nowadays everything has been sexualized on our commercial platforms, on social media, on our mainstream media, So if your child sees something happening and they ask you, what is this? And you tell them, that's bad manners, don't ask me that. So they decide to go and ask someone else, or they decide to go and Google it. What kind of information do you think they'll get? So it depends with the age of the child. There's no child who's too young, as long as their maturity level, according to you as the parent or the caregiver or the teacher, shows you that they are showing interest in it. I'd advise you to walk the journey with them. Otherwise, someone else will do it and they might not do it in the right way.
Oh, I'm so sorry for you who have children. Yeah. So that's actually very interesting and scary at the same time. I guess the role of a parent has changed over time. I also hope the parents are educated about what they can do for their children, which reminds me, a few weeks ago, I think 3 or 4 weeks ago, I was in Malawi for this non-government training where we were teaching the mothers what exactly child exploitation is. So what had happened was there was this I don't want to say Chinese, a foreigner who went and was actually taking videos of children holding signs and saying things in Chinese or Korea. I'm sorry, I'm not sure. I don't remember. It's Chinese or Korea, but the children don't understand what they're saying. And I think I should have done more investigation before getting there. But then you try and educate the mom, because the things they were saying, they didn't understand what they were. But when you translate them to English, they're very, very, I would say, very bad and sexualized as well. And then this content was being sold on their platform. So nothing within Africa. Yeah, it was Chinese. Yeah. And the mom was like, okay, why are you telling me this? My daughter is bringing me chicken at the end of the day. Yeah. And you have to try and explain why that is wrong. And they're like, but my child is not sexually exploited. I'm like, where do you draw the line? Yeah, because the content was not that good. It's not even something I can say here, but then how do you deliver that? Yeah, to a parent whose priorities are, I don't care about it, whatever they're saying, I just want to eat. And the child is bringing me chicken or biscuits at the end of the day. Yeah. And I know this is a form of child exploitation. Yeah.
There's one that really disturbs me. And I think I should just say it for parents who are here, just reality check. There was a time in Kenya where there was a WhatsApp group that was being formed, right? This WhatsApp group had about 150 plus members. A quarter of them, maybe 35% of them were above 16 to about 18. The other percentage were kids between 11 and 16. What were they planning? An orgy. So they have this house, they basically go to rent a house. One of the kids they come from rich families, they rent a house. So there were two scenarios. One parent went to drop the daughter at a house party. So he thought, but it's like, this house party is going to take 3 hours. I might as well just hang around. So he went for a walk. He parked the car outside the complex, and it's a very nice green area. So he walked around, did his exercises, read. And then the guard is like, hey, you're waiting for your daughter. Where there's no parent in that house. Like, it's a house that is for rent. Because trying to find out why is he walking around waiting for the daughter to finish the party, he can go. So he stormed in and just broke things down, only to realize that the boys who actually been planning such a thing for all the young ones. So it was not a party which the parents were supposed to go for. But that WhatsApp group, what disturbs me was they had a game they were playing that, like, from 1 to 6 or 1 to 9, different activities. If you kiss, if you make out, if you do certain sexual things, they give you points. And guess what? They were actually doing all these things? Karura Forest. So you go leave them in Karura Forest thinking they're going for their walks. They're actually doing things and they take evidence. You'll not believe what the award is. A Jameson bottle. And it's that serious that here in Kenya, such things are happening and you think. So I tell people, monitoring kids is not a bad thing. If you have to put controls, tools like Custodio, Google Family Link and everything, I mean, this is not that costly. If you can actually buy such tools, just monitor the kids, I think it's really important. And kids that are gaming, I'm always being called almost every other week because kids are gaming and they put on headphones, talking to somebody. You have no idea who they're talking to on the internet. One of them, which I was investigating, we had to talk to the kid only to realize that he was saying that his friend online has a YouTube link, which is sent to him, and he's old enough now for a WhatsApp phone. And the friend is like, "Oh, you go and watch one." I opened that link only to realize that link was actually a pornographic link. And to him, it was a gamer who talks to him. So we need to be a little bit careful. That's some of the things that are happening, just to add on to what you're saying.
And to the room and to the panelists as well. The question we have to ask ourselves, and as a cybersecurity practitioner, I usually struggle with this quite a bit. At what point in time do we trust the human being 100% in as far as their cybersecurity is concerned? I often ask this question because I believe that I don't think we can ever get there, because security, just like how you can look at, it's a change in lifestyle, it's a change in the way we live. It makes us a bit uncomfortable. If you look at how many of us have been in the cybersecurity space personally, and then you ask me how many times I change my passwords, because it's not something that we are accustomed to. So
what do we do? And maybe this is a question now to the guys in the room and to the panelists. What do we do? Because even if I feel as though we might be able to sensitize to a certain point in time and people might be a bit more aware, but the practitioners, the cybersecurity hackers out there are becoming more and more clever in as far as trying to compromise. Let's look at the children scenario. One day it's a YouTube link. The next day it's going to be a soccer ball, for example. Someone will send you, there's so many creative ways in which people are coming out in as far as trying to compromise us. So as a practitioner, the question I'm asking is, do we trust, how do we manage the scenario where we can't trust the human aspect of things in as far as cybersecurity is concerned? That's my question.
Oh, are we scared? We're very scared, eh? All right, let's go to the solutions now. Thank you very much for the input. And I know we could talk about child protection all day, and it's a very interesting topic, for all parents and all people who want to be parents and all who have been parents. Yeah. But back to the DNS discussion of, DNS security. And this goes to Mr. Makatiani. Let's talk DDoS attacks for small and medium-sized businesses. So first of all, maybe let our audience know what DDoS attacks are, who are targeted, and how Serianu actually counters this. Sorry to keep mentioning your company, but I think that's a good thing. Yeah, how you guys counter this for, those companies that are not really have the big budgets for these very huge products, out here.
All right, thank you very much, Judy, for the question, and great discussion on the issue of child and children on the internet. I think it's an alarming issue because most parents don't understand what their kids are doing online. Yeah? Half the time, even you as a parent, you get fatigued. Yeah, and we all want them to go run around and do things which doesn't bother, or rather don't bother us. Anyway, back to the issue of DDoS. Imagine yourself in a restaurant trying to talk to your friend. You're chatting about the day, maybe you're sipping on whatever it is you sip on. And there's someone around the corner who just keeps shouting. Do you communicate? Now, that is denial of service. Someone is denying your ability to discuss something with someone else. Imagine now there are 7 people around you who are doing the same thing. So I'm trying to talk to him. Meanwhile, if it's Bright or somebody else, they're talking about all these things. All of a sudden, you can't communicate. Now, some of us are not very loud, yeah? Which means you don't have enough capacity. Yes? Now, if you're loud enough, it will be so obnoxious, they'll stop. But anyway, when you think about most resources that you access over the internet, a lot of these resources have limited capacity, and you'll be able to communicate based on the bandwidth that you use per second or that. When you get some other resource that comes in, or somebody who's trying to access, or an attacker that limits how much activity you can get, then the legitimate users of those resources are not able to go in. So that is simply a denial of service because the resource cannot be able to serve. If it's a server, it's a web content delivery portal, you cannot be able to access. When you get multiple attackers targeting that particular resource, then it becomes a distributed denial of service. We've seen this a lot with some of the portals. In Kenya, during the election period, we saw 1 or 2 media websites were targeted. And for a period of almost 6 hours, that website was not available. Globally, I think 2021, we saw AWS was targeted. We saw Google. We've seen quite a number. And even in, I think, 2012, we saw quite a number of banks that were targeted, 6 banks that are targeted, global banks. In Kenya, a lot of the service providers are the ones that are targeted because of different reasons. But I think when you think about DDoS, for majority of the small organizations, most likely it's your website. I don't think most of you have content that will really interest someone to go in and deny your services. A lot of us have simple websites, but rather simple server spaces and a lot of that. You'll notice a lot of bloggers are now using Cloudflare or using a lot of these, which other services?
Just saying that they are aware now.
They're aware now. And it's cheap, actually. So you're able to, even bloggers, you see now bloggers actually now use a lot of these cloud DDoS services for that. The big organizations, most ISP now, even the local ones, do have capabilities using bigger solutions. Banks, because of their mobile banking and a lot of the internet portals that they use, they do have services that they use for DDoS. So again, in the region, quite a number of service providers or web portals are the ones that are targeted. If you're a small pharmacy that doesn't do a lot of online transactions, we don't see this as a major risk for you. If you're a bank, especially with this API economy, there's an API everywhere, yes? There's an API going somewhere. And for those of you who don't know about API and cybersecurity, start spending some time on API, because even your firewall now has an API. You get it. I no longer need to have a syslog server to collect logs from a Fortinet system or even a checkpoint server firewall. There's an API. The problem with that is there's so many interconnectedness that something like a DDoS now becomes a reality. If you are providing service around transaction processing and I bring you down, it means an entire telco ecosystem that's relying on you can now go down, yeah? So those are things with the web services that we're now seeing, but there are remedial actions that you can take. And as I've mentioned, a few of those, but there are many others that we can be able to discuss beyond this discussion. And of course, Infoblox is here, the new kid in the house. Hopefully I'm not marketing you too much, but they're the new kids on the block and they're doing well. And I think they're also affordable, yeah? Affordable, yeah. So anyway, but we keep seeing a lot of those services. Some are online, some are on premise. If you don't have a big budget, you'll also get capacity around that, around DDoS. Thank you.
Maybe I can comment briefly about that. So when you look at the denial of service attacks, I feel that they leverage an ecosystem that constitutes the user, the infrastructure, and the actual communication itself. So you must find a way in which you protect that infrastructure that's providing you the critical service in instances whereby your infrastructure leverages DNS communication. You must protect the communication associated with that infrastructure. Sometimes the service is actually leveraging the actual, for example, .co.ke. That is now your focus area. You must find a way to protect that. And also, the user is a critical aspect of the whole, DNS ecosystem, I mean, the DDoS ecosystem, because a compromise to one user can be the launch platform for an entire much larger DDoS type attack. So we are focusing on the infrastructure itself. You're focusing on the user. You're focusing on the communication, and you're trying to see how you can build security control around those key areas.
All right, don't put the mic down. So on the same, maybe you can give our audience some solutions they can put in place to, to counter or just be aware of what's happening in the infrastructure on a DNS attack vector. Yeah.
Yeah, so again, to expound on, I kind of preemptively answered the question, but I'd like to pose a question. How many of us believe that, especially for the guys in the room who are implementing security controls, how many of us believe that we have implemented enough security controls on our infrastructure? By show of hands. I asked a friend of mine that question and he responded politically and he responded truthfully at some point in time. He said, politically, yes, because I cannot admit to having loopholes in my cybersecurity setup. But the actual fact is, I don't think there's ever a point in time we will have implemented enough cybersecurity controls. Because once you get there, I believe, like Bright has said, the young boys that are coming out of school these days are a lot smarter than the guys we have now. So your security control for now may not be relevant in a few months. Your DNS security control, DNS might be the loophole now, but I do not know what's going to be the loophole in the next few years. So the concept that we must put forward is a concept of continuous improvement as cybersecurity professionals. We must always look at how can we improve, how can we, stay ahead of these guys who are trying to compromise our infrastructure. I had the privilege of meeting one of the CIO of one of these Silicon Valley companies, and he was mentioning that they consistently. So if I go to them with a solution and that solution improves their security posture by 20%, then that's reason for them to change because they'll have moved up in as far as that control is concerned. So he says he's consistently doing POCs to find the best possible solutions for each one of his. Of course, that's a bit hectic given the workload, given our security skills. But for me, what resonated with me is they're always looking at data-driven ways to improve. What's happening in your infrastructure? What feedback is coming in, and as far as reporting is concerned, what is your security control telling you about DNS specifically, and how can you move forward with that? Most of us will struggle with, of course, justifying why you're investing in another security control, as always. Defense in depth is important. Again, as part of our security improvement, we must always adapt the philosophy that we put in place a security control that complements the ones that we already have. You might have a control that is focusing on perimeter security, but does that sufficiently protect you against a DNS-specific attack? That's also another question. Does that sufficiently protect you against denial of service, for example, right? So let's look at it from a holistic perspective, and maybe just to give a general answer just look at it from the ability to continuously improve. Yeah, that would be my takeaway.
All right, thank you. For organizations, I think that's very beneficial. Thank you very much. Before we had the team, that sets up policies and help us with the standards, and then we have the team here that does the implementation. Maybe Anthony, you can help us, understand. How we can bridge the knowledge gap between our board members and the cybersecurity guys who are actually the KYM, so that, people like, Serianu can make it rain here, have big budgets, to understand what's the need for big budgets, why we need this budget for cybersecurity, why is it necessary? Maybe you can help us with that as well.
Okay. Do you want the truth or the politically correct answer? Yeah.
We want the truth.
You want the truth. Okay.
Yes.
Our current deputy president taught us to be truthful, right? But I think maybe the things that I can say, particularly having interacted with many boards across East and rest of Africa, is I think we haven't really done well as techies on our part. Let me be very frank, right? Because how we tend to communicate sometimes would be very technical, John goes there and mentions his fancy tools. Bright comes here, he's saying blade servers and all that stuff. I come and and tell them about malware and all those variants, darknet, IRC, whatnot, onion router, and fear always sells. So what we do on top, we scare them. Tell them, look at this bank, it was hacked in Russia. Look at this other bank, it was hacked in South Africa or Kenya. There's a time I attended a board as a silent consultant/advisor, and I was told not to say anything, but just to listen to what the CIO was saying and advise the board if that CIO was honest. Imagine, it got to that point because they felt what we're just hearing are just stories and horror stories. We are being scared and they're asking money. So out of that emotion of being scared, we sign off, but we don't understand what we're doing. So as techies, and I honestly also have to take responsibility as part of that community, we haven't really done well in terms of relaying that bridging that gap, that knowledge gap, because you're talking to sometimes laymen, yeah, maybe in their 70s, in their 60s, business people, accountant by background, or lawyers. And when you look at that board, you find that tech skill may not be very, well represented. But now I'm seeing a change across. And they understand, I think, key things. Number one, bottom line, what are we earning? How much money are we making? How are we protecting share value? How are we maintaining? It's all about money, the dollars and all that, right? So I feel as particularly security practitioners, what we need to also do is invest time just to understand business very, very well. Yeah. And one of the things that fortunately, and even as KPMG, we are business advisors, yeah, in our DNA, because there's a tax and all that, and then there's a technology consulting. But bridging this message in a way that they're going to understand. If you invest, what are some of the likely scenarios that, let's say you have a cyber attack, right? Running them through this cyber war gaming so that they can understand the true impact to the business. If today maybe you have a DOS like senior Senior William has mentioned in terms of a large-scale cyber attack. What will it mean to your business? How much money can you do? Can you lose? And that is why it's important to have the scenarios, business impact assessments, right? Particularly from a cyber perspective. Like for instance, if this is a bank and they're down for a single day, do they understand their revenue per hour generating capacity in any given hour? And those are the matrices we need to also advocate for, because without those key matrices, and it ideally needs to translate to a dollar value, then it's going to be very hard to sell this message. And then number two, if you lose this money, if we are going to do this projection, how much will it be, right? Now, vis-a-vis, John comes here, wants you to invest maybe in a DNS a firewall or another solution, next generation firewall, or even a SIEM. And when we look at the cost of investment against the cost of a cyber breach, yeah, is it commensurate? Is it more or is it less? You'll have their attention because they'll now understand the return of investment. Why? Because we've linked it to the heart of any business, which is what? Creating value. And that is where we need to be honest as techies, particularly on this other side, where, either in security, whether in technology operations, we need to invest time to understand the business very, very well. And also understand what are the crown jewels for this business. Yeah. For instance, if an attacker was to hit a bank, what would they go for? Like AD attack, right? And then they go and they pivot to that, maybe the core banking. And then what will happen? How can they save on money? How can we lose value, right? So the thing of also telling that story in a way that they can understand becomes extremely important. Yes, it's inevitable. We'll still have to mention some of this, technical jargons and all that, but we need to also look at the business context that we need to package the message. And then lastly, and we've seen this even particularly with forward-thinking regulators like CBK, where they've mandated the boards to be trained, right? And every year there has to be that training, so that perpetually we are basically bridging that gap so that they understand, why is a policy important? What is a policy, first of all? What is it supposed to do? Number two, what is a cyber strategy? What are the tenets of a strategy? How should this be? And what is the value for you? And then you'll be able to justify that ROSI, return on security investments. Because I can tell you in those boardrooms, you'll see a lot of antiques, including there's one I saw, the CIO had cut out a paper from the newspaper, right? And this was ideally headline that a bank was hacked. Yeah. So I will send that picture on WhatsApp. Anthony, is this true? And you look at how much money is being requested. So you've done a lot of, you haven't done awareness. So you're just getting the sign-offs, but by the end of the day, you're not educating them, you're not empowering them. And that is why we need to justify our investments. And there are very many frameworks, by the way, on such return on security investments, ROSI as we call it, because in essence, these cybersecurity plans, as ambitious as they are, something. And a firewall is not something that's going to make money, right? But how then do you shape that narrative in a way that it's going to protect the money that we have already created? And that is why technical experts, security experts, we need to work with businesses. Even if it's in government, the people who are making these decisions, most of them, not all, most of them may not have the privilege of the backgrounds that we have, that depth of understanding. So we need to take time to educate them and slowly walk with them that journey. Eventually, you'll find that the story is going to change. There'll be proponents, because you also need ambassadors, right? At that level of decision-making, you need people who are going to say, oh, by the way, every year, we know what this cybersecurity budget is all about, and we understand its importance. And when we do, and even when they go to the audit reports, those are some of the things that we need to use, and just to look at, these are issues, this is how we can address it, but this is a future back, value back in terms of the return on this particular investment.
All right, just going off script, don't put that down. No, just to you, Anthony. What should be the salary gap between a CISO and a head of information security who's doing engineering? Give me a number, any number.
The what?
The salary gap.
For who?
For a CISO and an engineering, cybersecurity engineer.
Okay, that's a loaded question.
Please
Yeah.
don't give the politically whatever
Correct
answer. I
answer.
want the honest one.
My goodness,
Eh?
I don't have an answer for that, but let me just say this, and it's good we are fair, particularly when we look at the people, like if this is a CISO and the cybersecurity engineer, right? I think we just need to be fair, not to say that the engineers are the least, yeah, but what constitutes a CISO?
Anthony, give us a number.
I am trying to be politically, I don't have a number, to be quite honest.
Eh? Give us a number. Eh?
So my good brother Bright has helped me. He
Yeah.
said that there has to be like 40%. So, but let me politicize it. A range of 30 to 70, 50, 60%. But in essence, it's a very tough. In essence, it's many dynamics would ideally fall in play there. Number one, maturity of the organization. Sustain that pay. Number two, like I said, and oh, by the way, if there are security engineers here, one of the things I've seen, and this one of my clients did this, during these cyber war gaming exercises, they were able to paint a picture to the board that they are the gatekeepers, yeah? And that they're protecting the organization. And remember, dollar values came up. They were able to do projections very, very, very precise in terms of this is how much we can lose, and this is projected, this is how much in a month that it can cost our business. Should this, in the unlikely event, it happens, right? So what happened? That year, during their performance evaluation, they were actually given a very, very generous pay hike because their value to the organization was ideally proven. But to answer your question, I don't have an answer between Sina Maoni, between the pay gap difference.
Yeah.
But I can tell you, I think particularly in tech, we live in a day where any organization knows that this is the engine of the business, and the gatekeepers, the security engineers, I believe many people in this room should also have, a very good stake there.
So if a CISO is making $10,000, how much me as an engineer should I make? I'm not letting you go. I need to know.
Guys, I'm sweating. I don't have hair, but anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. But
Give me
again,
an estimate, just an estimate.
Salaries are very difficult to point because number one,
Why are you evading our question?
you see, I can be a politician. Let me defer this question.
Yeah.
My brother Bright, I think he has views. Let me defer this question, right? We're on the same team, by the way.
Okay.
What he says is what I say.
Okay.
No, I mean, it depends on what kind of level of engineer you're looking at as well. Every kind of organization you'll find some organizations have a network engineer, there's an API engineer, somebody who just does API security. There's somebody who does software security engineering, for security. So a CISO is supposed to be somebody who actually sees from the top level, right? And communicate that to the board, to the management, provide some sort of direction. A technical engineer might not even know how to translate that on an every day. So I don't expect the technical person to earn anything close to what a CISO is even making. So if a CISO is making $10,000, depending on also the output of that engineer, he should be compensated very well. But I'll say about $4,000 around that compared to the CISO, because also comes with experience, right? Put that particular engineer can show you how easily it is to hack the network, but he can't even explain or even look at what kind of solutions are supposed to put in place to stop that. I've seen that so many times. Know how to attack, but how to defend or what the strategy to put in place to protect the future of the company, they have no idea. So do you want to put them so close to the CISO? No. But sometimes you might find some of them who have multiple skill sets. So I usually say people should be compensated for multiple kinds of skill sets. If you find a person who knows how to do, most security engineers can do network pen test, but if you give them any kind of web application, they can't do it. It's not their domain. Some are good at web and mobile and API, put them on network, they can't do that. But you find someone who can do mobile, network, API, web, cloud, and engineering, and also how to put strategy. Now put that someone like that at 700, if the CISO is making 10,000, because these are multiple skills. And should I pick one of each of those people, what would it come to? So if somebody can actually prove that they have those number of skill set and they can actually demonstrate that effectively and communicate that properly, pay them for that.
Maybe I can comment as well, because I think we're not human resource practitioners here. We're all cybersecurity people, but At the end of it all, for me, it boils down to the value that the organization derives from the individual. So if the organization is dependent on that security or that engineering resource in the same way that they're dependent on the CISO, then they can argue for the same pay, because if for example, I came from a system engineering background, and we had senior resources who are almost paid the same salary as the MD, because those resources were critical in generating revenue, supporting the infrastructure and the customers that we were engaging with. So that justified that salary increment. So in some situations, the value is not perceived to be the same. The CISO could be at a level where he's, perceived to be a lot more valuable than the engineer. That's now a debate depending on the organization.
And Judy,
Yeah.
as we wrap that up, I think the other thing I might want to, there's a story where a guy called someone to fix something, and that person was able to fix it in 5 minutes, right? And so the customer, the client asked, then why are you charging me this amount of money? Then he said it's the amount of years of experience and exposure it took to be able to fix it in 5 minutes, right? And to know exactly where to maybe fix and where to go. So I mean, I think to just wrap it up, there are very many dynamics that come into this. Yes, the engineer might have very, very good skills, but you find maybe the CISO, by virtue of that exposure and experience, is able, number one, to connect to the board, is also able, has that platform of the skills. And one of the things that you might and we need to accept is that even at that level, the CISO may not be able to do everything, right? I'm actually convinced, the best cybersecurity minds in Kenya are not in this panel. Let me be very honest, because there's a new generation that is coming. The ones that Bright talked about, some of them and the guys I've been privileged to work with, they teach me some of these things, right? But do we say, because they can do that I can't do, that they need to earn the same like I do? I don't think there's an imbalance there. No, there is an imbalance there. However, and this is how we can speak, particularly decision makers. Cyber is a niche skill. So is things like AI, data analytics. We need to create islands of competence in our respective organizations, that they are appreciated based on the value that they generate and the value that is perceived. For instance, I know of an insurance company in Kenya. The highest paid people in that insurance company, it's among the top 5, is the actuarial team. The analyst in that actuarial team would be earning the equivalent of maybe a manager or a senior manager within the same organization. Why? Because the leadership, they were able to justify why they need to pay these guys above the normal scale. And that would be my take home on that.
Now, the reason I asked, maybe now to Bright, the reason I asked is we have these big competitors that are in the market now, the Microsoft, Google, Visa. Did I miss one? No. And the competition is really stiff, comparing what they are paying versus what our ecosystem is paying right now. So you're losing a lot of people to these big firms, and that's why I'm trying to understand the salary gap, because also in terms of, if you look at the dark space, there's no CISO roles in the dark space. It's who can do what, and you get paid for what you can do. They're not CISO in anonymous or these crime companies or whatever, but the salaries are what actually differentiates, actually keeps somebody in that company, because somebody needs to eat, somebody needs to feed, and then eat and housing and all of these things. But then you think, why am I making $3,000 and I do all the job that the CISO should be doing, but he's making 10,000 and I'm making 3,000. Why do I need to be here? It's very easy for you to recruit me in a organized crime group, because 3,000 is making 10,000 and all he wants to do is tell me how to do his job. And this has been a very big concern.
No, if the CISO and the engineer are doing the same job, then he's not at the right place. I mean, he's clearly at the wrong place. Because that means you don't have a good boss who can actually mentor you or to give you the right path. You don't expect, I mean, I hire people, like for example, I tell people I hire character, I train skill. And I know most of the people will actually be able to come teach me something. If you come to my team and you can't teach me something new, then you're not in my team. Fraser every day will teach me a new tool. He's there. Technically, he tells me, I found this new one of the direction that I gave him. He says, I think we can now use this tool as well to add to the list, right? He's like, have you tried it? It's like, this one failed, this one works. Do I have the time to do that? Yeah, maybe, sometimes no. Do we have to pay around the same time? Maybe not the same level, right? So there's a lot of we need to actually define the difference between what a CISO really does and what an engineer has to do. And also, look, you can be paid the best money in the world, but if you're not comfortable and you're not having a nice work environment, then you're not going to grow, right? So yes, some of the big companies right now paying that level of money, I can tell you for free. And this is what I've heard from some of them. They're bored. Some. This is what they told me. They're being paid good money. They also have stock. The stock options is what usually attracts a lot of them, but they have nothing to do. You're focusing on one thing and one thing only. You can't think left or right for anything else. You've been told this is the product, focus on this for the rest of your next 2 years. So you stay there for 1 year, 1.5 years. What do? You leave. Where are you going to go to? Where you'll be paid the same amount of money. Hey, but I'm not saying money is not good. Money is good. I want money. I also want the cash. But also we need to take into consideration what are kind of some of the skill set and what does your future look like when you're trying to develop those skill sets. So a progressive kind of way, fine. Can Serianu and the likes match those salaries? It might be hard because William can. But the thing also we need to understand is the value you're going to get out of that has to match the same way. That we don't keep on being the ones to train all the engineers and then another company just come to sweep them away, take them for more money, for something to come just kill them. You may actually get to die in a particular entity. You know how our industry is. If I don't touch a Linux operating system in a week, I go mad. Why? I can't stop. The moment I stop for 1 week without touching a Linux operating system, I would have lost a lot of things. So there's that constant practice. Now you go to another company where you're restricted to certain kind of technology to use and you can't practice anything else. There's a very high chance you lose that skill set in a few years. And the next person to take you're only just working for survival and it's not something that you love doing as passion. So the dynamics are very many. So that's all I can say about that.
Okay, maybe William can tell us how he's managing to maintain, his talent in Serianu.
It's a tough market. Huh? It really is a tough market because, we are passionate about what we do at Serianu. And part of that journey is you put everything into what you're doing. Yeah. Some of our analysts don't sleep. Yeah, they're up all morning. I think Bright mentioned something that was very, very something that on point. A lot of these guys, when they go to different places where they find now it's repetitive work, then they'll call you back and tell you, hey, I think I'm enjoying the money, but I'm really not enjoying what we're doing. But part of it is why we came together with the Kenya Bankers Association and USIU, and we decided, you know what, if we can train some of these students within 6 months, then why don't we actually put in place a strategy that requires us to continuously do it? So as Serianu, since 2012, we've been training at least 20 university students. It's been consistent and it continues to work, and it helps us because when we lose somebody, we get somebody else. Right now, we are targeting 2,000 students in 3 years. So far, I think almost 25 of the students we've trained together with Kenya Bankers have gotten jobs. They're getting good jobs. A very interesting statistic. We moved into Botswana in 2017. At that time, we had our first conference in Botswana, and that time we had 30 speakers. Of the 30 speakers, 27 were all foreigners. We just had our 6th conference this year, and funny enough, 27 of the speakers were all Botswana speakers. All the people we trained in the market have been taken over by Bokra, so all the people we trained. So it is a problem that will continue happening. For you to run a business, to start a business, you need to find ways of addressing the problem. Our problem of the day here is skill set. So if you don't go out and pursue partnerships, as Fidelis mentioned in the other case, you really are going to get stuck. And you're dealing with very ambitious people. We go out to hire some of the smartest kids in the market, yeah? And they're ambitious. They're not going to stay there for 6 years, yeah? And we do encourage them anyway. Yeah. If you get a job, somebody called me and told me I've gotten a job in Ireland with Amazon. I'm like, you've gotten a job in Ireland. What are you going to do? They've hired me as the cloud front, that I'll be an engineer. To be honest, I'll even buy you the ticket. You get it? I'll even support you to get the ticket and get the visa because I know what that will do. But the only difference is, as Bright said, when you come back here with that salary, you'll only get 2 organizations to work for. Actually, 2. There's a bank and a telco. And even there, you'll be bored. If they kick you out, you'll be done. There's a gentleman I know who's worked in almost 7 organizations, changing jobs every year. And the challenge with that is you start looking at this graph where you're looking at your flow. You started at 40,000, you end at 70,000. He's now at 450. And for what he's doing, those 2 organizations can hire him. But when they look at him, he doesn't have the managerial skills, yeah, because he kept moving. So you need to start balancing that to say, okay, what other skills am I building beyond just being a techie? Because eventually anything that goes around comes around, yes? Yeah, eventually you want to come back home. So you either start working with us together and figure out how to build these salaries up, or you go back and you'll come with all these big skills and we'll be looking at you telling you, okay. Or so you can do data analytics, AI, machine learning. Like the only machine learning I do here is look at this screen and find out what the issue is. Yeah. Think about the stockbrokers. There are a lot of stockbrokers who came back here after the 2008 issue in the US. And they all came with a CFA. I can do all these things. I want to try work at the Nairobi Stock Exchange. So they get there and they started talking about derivatives. So the hiring manager says, what? Derivatives, you did derivatives in New York. Yes, we can do all these things. And how much do you make? Oh, 7,000. That's just the package. Relocation package is 5,000. Guess what? He really wants to be here. He really wants to be here. To come down to $3,000 to work here. So it's something we need to look at as a community issue. This is not an individual. You can go look for those salaries. Some of us left salaries where we used to work. And we came here, we were telling people VAPT, they're looking at you like, what? What is that? So no, I think it's a communal issue which we have to work together as practitioners. There's a huge market. Last week I was in Nigeria. And when you think about the challenges, so there are a couple of providers that are working in Nigeria. So there's a couple of players. But the challenges that all these countries face, there's enough work for one country to do incident response, for another country to do threat hunting, for another country to do all these things. The work is there. The problem with us, we are so impatient. You want to make quick money and move on. So then who's going to innovate? Anyway, so it's a bigger problem than we think. When someone calls me and tells me we need to talk, sometimes I call them back. I'm like, I don't want to talk tomorrow morning. What is it you want? Is it a job offer? Yeah, but I've gotten comfortable with it based on the partnership that we have, because now we can train somebody in 3 to 6 months. So the skills up. Thank you.
You're very passionate about it. You are the edge of your seat.
Do you remember there's something which you need to keep in mind? The average time anybody stays in a company, usually, I think in Kenya, it's about 2 years. Most of them, the Gen Zs, and I'm not picking the Gen Zs, but most people right now are not even loyal more than 2 years on average. That's what I've seen with a lot of the young people coming right now. So also there's a lot of grooming that needs to be done, that they know exactly what trajectory they're taking, so that they know exactly how they go. So sometimes we stay in a company for 4 years, they're like, wow, you stay for long? They're like, and I'm like, what? They're like, but they're going for the next. So they offer you 20,000 Kenya shillings extra, you go for it. And you're forgetting exactly what. So just as a point of note.
All right.
Sorry, I just have to say this. What worries me the most with this Gen Z population is these grants you're winning to develop mobile apps. The challenge with those things, you can show up in Sweden and win those apps, but I want you to show up in a microfinance here and try sell that app to that IT manager. Or show up in Uganda and they start asking you how you did your source code security and development and DevOps. Questions that are on paper, meanwhile your app won an award somewhere. We're actually losing something with those grants. And it's scary. Because you'll win those awards, you'll come here, the newspaper will splash all over, somebody won an award. But trust me, there's a gentleman in a microfinance looking at you saying, you know what, never come back here again. And that's the real money. Yeah? These guys have money. Yeah, for me, that worries me the most. When I see all these guys rushing around with grants, the ground, is it? Between the different ground, yes.
Pole sana.
Judy,
Okay, to the last question, sorry.
and maybe on that note, maybe just to say something, you can hear that this is a big problem, right? And to the young people, because I've seen younger guys from universities, some maybe starting their career. If you're thinking of getting into cyber, please do, by all means. There is a fantastic opportunity there, because like even, Senior William, as I call him, what he's mentioned is that this is a community problem, because what has been happening is musical chairs. You poach from Bank A, one big four poaches them, and then they eventually somehow end up at Microsoft or the big guys who now pay extraordinary high salaries. So we need to basically groom other people. So if you're exploring, please join. If you're not sure how to do that, talk to William, talk to John, talk to myself, Athena, or even Bright. We can make that connection.
Thank you. I have a very passionate panel. Yeah. To our last question, and then we can take some questions from the audience. To Athena, we'd like to also understand, the protection. How are you guys and service providers? How do you guys ensure that service providers actually, ensure child safety online?
Thank you for that. And a lot has been said. And maybe to just emphasize in response to your question, there's something that Anthony said about focusing on the technology and ignoring the fact that it's a human being who'll be operating the technology at the end. So these threats are against people and they are created by people. So the only way to tackle them is to be able to understand the human nature. And first of all, what you have to do is awareness, and more awareness, because technology is constantly means every day we have something new to learn. And as ICMEC, what we are doing is working with stakeholders at different levels to be able to create awareness and train them on the pertinent issues when it comes to online exploitation, domain name abuse, and even something that was mentioned in the previous panel about chain of evidence. And the question is, what he said was that the law enforcement, the legal fraternity does not know how to handle electronic evidence, but this electronic evidence has to be handed over by a lay person. So for example, if I find out that this is the phone that my child was being blackmailed through, what would I do? If I break that phone, I have destroyed evidence. So even if I go and report it, it will be more difficult for the law enforcement to investigate into the issue. So when we have awareness at different levels, letting everyone know the role that they have to play, we are one step closer in creating trust and creating security online. And also we advise the domain name registrants not only issue domains, but also verify. If I just come and say, okay, I want a .ke, will you just give it to me without knowing my background? I could be a serial killer. Do you really look into that before you issue out? And now that everything has been automated, the question would be, what safeguards have been put there to ensure that the people who are using the domain names are actually who they say they are? Also, are the domain name registrants taking an active role in deleting, suspending, and even collaborating with investigators to ensure that once a report has been made, it is being investigated? Or do you hide behind confidentiality and say that we cannot reveal this information? It's private information, yet you know that crimes, whether against children or the general public, has happened. So awareness creation and working together, because if you work alone, there is no way you're going to be safe online, because everyone has a role to play. Thank you.
Thank you. Which I should have somebody from Kenik answer if there's a KYC. Do you guys have KYC for businesses, by the way? You should. I think that's something. Yeah. You should know your customers, know your businesses. So KYCs, KYBs, that would be a very good initiative to have for registrars like Kenik. Yeah. All right. So it's a Q&A session. Anyone with a question? Okay. There's a question here.
Yeah, thank you very much for the discussion. My question is, there are every day there are security cyber attack incidents. And I want to ask, what is your opinion on publishing this, for public view? What is your opinion? Is it in a way advisable, or it's opened other doors for more attacks? And what is your opinion on it? That's number one question. And then number two, there are in the internet space, there are a lot of free things, and they use free things to also entice people, to bring people to to compromise things and all that. So what is your advice against those things that are tagged or labeled free for users? So for example, free Wi-Fi and all those and all that. So what are your opinions too? Thank you.
All right, another question. Yeah, I hope you're writing this down. I have another question here.
Hi, my name is Renee. I just wanted to mention, two things. When Anthony was speaking, he mentioned the business impact assessment as part of the proactive steps that businesses can take in cybersecurity. And I just wanted to mention that the Data Protection Act advocates for a data impact assessment as some of these steps, which I believe in my understanding
What are the top 5 rampant cyber attacks in this country? And the second question is, what opportunities in the cyberspace or in cybersecurity exist that the youth can tap in? And also ask people in business who have established businesses, but we want to engage or enter into cybersecurity. Thank you.
Very good question.
Okay,
Yes.
I have one question.
There's one from there, yeah.
Just to KPMG, and it's about ethics. I wanted to know, because he talked about a lot about in terms of hacking and the pricing. Recently, we had the issue in the papers about doctors, and the other time we had the issue about IBC hiring 20 law firms. So is there any regulatory provision or any body that actually checks on the price index? Because me as a layman, you can come to the board and even scare us and give us a case study of what happened in the US and say, okay, for me to do this for you people, I need maybe something like about 40 million. So in the ecosystem, is there any regulatory kind of ethics in terms of the pricing index? Thank you.
All right, thank you. Pricing, yeah. All right, so I think that's the end. So, oh, there's one more, the last one, please. Yeah, from there. Yeah, the last one. The last one, and each panelist should pick a question from each candidate. Yeah, the last question, yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Jackson Kimeu. I'm a cloud governance and cybersecurity specialist. And first is a comment and general appreciation to the forum. It has been quite insightful with great discussions. But a general comment. I think it's a high time as a nation, we need to get things done. In the cyberspace, cybersecurity, 15 years ago, we used to see or rather view cybersecurity vulnerability as a house with open doors and open windows. 10 years ago, we used to view cybersecurity vulnerability as a house with closed doors and open windows. 2 years ago, we are viewing cybersecurity vulnerability as a smart house. But during all this period, we're still experiencing a lot of vulnerability within the environment. So what is the way forward? Can we look cybersecurity as a pivotal way of prevention? And what do I mean with that? We do have Data Protection Act. We do have what we call cloud governance. We do have what we call cybersecurity sovereignty, cloud sovereignty. So these are the areas that I think we need to explore as a nation, or rather at Africa at large. And then we'll be able to see a much better way in prevention. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment. So Anthony, you can start off with the gentleman's question in regards to publishing. Okay, or you want to do that? Okay.
Yeah, so I wanted to answer the gentleman about the top 5 cyber attacks, right? A lot of people don't like to report this, but let me just say point blank, ransomware. Ransomware is one of the most attacked vectors right now. Why? Because there's so many systems that are online that are easily discoverable by very easily botnets that are automatically doing this. I wish I had my laptop here. I would have shown you how easily it is to exploit one of the systems in Kenya in less than 10 seconds because I'll show you how to do it done. In fact, Apple takes 6 seconds. There's that. Ransomware attacks is one of the biggest. Second is the business email compromise. Just last night, almost every other week, I'm always doing an incident response of business email compromise where people are being hacked. Either one of your clients is being hacked and then they redirect the details of where the email is going to. Let me give a typical example. I'm here selling flowers, right? And I have partners in the Netherlands. So the Netherlands people or any other person could actually be hacked. But the thing is, most businesses, right, have account names like accounts, payables, what's the other one? Procurement, right? So they actually have a group email or single emails. So one of the entities gets compromised and they change the rule set on the email server and they reply to. Goes to. So I saw one which the email was, say, let's call it dasani.co.ke. But then now they put dasani-co.tk. TK is one of the most common domains that are being used right now to register emails because you can't track it down. It's pointless. So again, so they do that. And then when they send an email to their other partner, what happens? They don't get it. Everything goes to the attacker. Now they know the kind of invoice that you're sending. They know the bank account details that you're trying to do. What do? They reply on your behalf. Let me tell you something. A lot of Kenyans have been paying thousands of dollars to the wrong bank account, thinking they've been doing that. Just last night, I was dealing with a similar situation. Somebody said somebody visiting Kenya booked a safari. They canceled, and when they said, "Oh, we want a refund," they paid to the wrong bank account because the person who responded to them was not the original person. So ransomware, business email compromise, there's a lot of API attacks. So many businesses, every business, like William was saying, people win all the grants and they create applications. But almost every business that you see in Kenya that has an API can easily be compromised. Why? Because I've tested a few number of them. They always happens. I'll give a typical example. You have a loan app which says you want to borrow money. So you put your name, phone number, amount, and you press request, right? It goes to the server and requests for that amount of money. But because APIs are not done properly in Kenya, which is a very common thing, you can change the amount and the number which should be sent to. And guess what? The amount actually goes there. Judy who sits here as an API guru, you think she's a ninja when it comes to API security, as this as she looks. So that is happening a lot. People are being compromised. A lot of businesses have M-Pesa floats, and then but for the fact that we have free tools that can exploit the APIs, you can request a large amount of money to actually go drain the entire wallet of businesses. Is happening. So ransomware, business email compromise, API. The fourth one, which is happening, is a lot of phishing attacks. General kind of phishing attacks where people are being sent links saying you pay to this bank account, you can shop on this kind of website, or you can do how do you call it? You can basically get some details from that. And that phishing attack is going way beyond what we normally were used to. It's so easy for me to spoof an email from you to her. It takes 10 seconds to do that, and it comes out even with your picture on your Gmail. I wish I had my other phone here. We could have showed you. So such things are happening, and hackers or attackers are taking advantage of that. There was a time, I don't know if it's still happening, where I had a lot of CEOs in my house. Trust me, those CEOs that I struggle to see are now coming to me. Do you know why? Guess why? They're all getting emails saying there's pornography on their email, on their laptop. That's a very common attack. It's because of SPF and DMARC records. Most people don't set it properly, so they get an email from themselves saying, we have discovered pornography you've been watching. We actually have the images or videos, so we are going to expose them if you don't pay a certain amount. Then people come running to my house, and I'm like, so you've been watching, huh? It's fake. I have never gotten that many CEOs in my house as my number went viral. And I'm like, nah, it's fake. These are people who just exploited the SPF and DMARC records. 95% of business in Kenya right now, let me say 96 or 97, don't have correct SPF or DMARC record sets. So it's easy to spoof their emails. Last but not the least, the mother of all hacking, social engineering, is happening on the rise. And I think that's one of the easiest that is actually happening to people. There are people who sit down every day and just make phone calls. Hi, is that Bright? I'm like, yeah. Bright Gameli, yes. Your M-Pesa account has been registered twice and we need to remove them. And guess what? The number actually shows Safaricom. Why? There are free tools to be able to mimic a phone call that makes it look like it came from your mother. It's easy. So now, back in the day, we used to use Motorola C113 to try to spoof base stations around. But now we don't even need to actually do that. Femtocells and everything, we don't need that. People are just buying simple softwares on the internet, and it makes it look like it came from Safaricom. So they do that, and then they say, oh, your other name registered is Rajesh Patel. I'm like, I'm not Indian. From the voice. So they said, oh, we'd like to remove them. Kindly confirm these details. They read out my ID, they read out details, and they ask for your what? M-Pesa PIN. And for the fact that majority of people are not aware, Social Engineer 101, they give it out, right? There are way worse social engineering tactics as you talk about, that plugging in a flash drive. Let me just conclude with one little story. Somebody sent me a DM on Instagram saying, hi, Bright, I've been told you can teach cybersecurity. I'm like, yeah, I do that all the time. What do you need? And it's like, I need to talk to you on phone. And Bright being Bright, I sent what? My phone number. This person responded to me with WhatsApp. It's like, I need to call you. I'm like, no, let's text. Let's know what engagement we're having, and then we can pick it up from there. It's like, no, there's an operation I need to put you on. You're the only person I've been told can do it. I said, you know what? Okay, let's get on the phone call. So I got on the call. This person told me his name is, I forgot his name. He gave me his name, told me how they want to hack Absa Bank, and I social engineered him back. So he actually gave me all details. He told me it's the HQ on Wayaki Way, second floor. There used to be 53 people on that floor. There are only 2 now. He even told me which part of the room they want to put a laptop to compromise the network and hack the network. It's like, you hack the network, I'll put the laptop, you hack the network, another person will do the database part of things. So I'm like, yeah, let's do it. What is the guy's name? He said, Kosgei. I'm like, thank you. Kosgei what? He gave me the other name. So he gave me the full details of the other person who is on the other side. So that's the last thing. Insider attacks are on the rise and they're never going to stop. So the earliest you start trying to do correct monitoring, correct, threat intelligence, to see the right indicators of compromise with the right use cases defined into your threat intelligence platform, because that SIM or that tool you put in is not going to work out of the box. If anybody sells you some of those tools that you think will work out of the box, it does not work. You have to do use case development to be able to make sure that it works. Right after that, I call APSA. Of course, they're my friends. I said, look out for this port. In the next 2 weeks, there's going to be a heavy scan on this particular port number, on this particular scan of activities like this. He was caught right on camera. This person was arrested. And I think that's victory because I bank with APSA. So anyway, so I've given you 6 instead of 5. I think that really covers for those stuff. How to get into cybersecurity, research, talk to me. We share a lot of information. We have WhatsApp groups. I'm happy to add you to a few of them to see how we can actually exchange ideas. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay.
So,
Keep it very short, please.
yes,
Yeah.
I'll go for, I'll take, precedence, because as I was taking notes, my handwriting is so bad, I can't read most of the questions I wrote down. So I'll pick the ones that I can remember. So one of our colleagues asked about publishing some of the information out on the internet, especially when a cybersecurity attack occurs. So while sometimes, because we try to preach the message, and I always feel like sometimes our profession is a mix between insurance and being like a medical doctor. So you have to go out and tell people, if you don't do this, you may get sick. And then sometimes when a story breaks like that, they're like, okay, fine, we actually at risk. So they come and they start discussing around the solution. But why that may be incentive for us to publish some of this information, I feel the biggest incentive is the fact that the stakeholders of that organization deserve to know that they have been hacked. So if you're banking with an organization, if you're engaging, if you're a shareholder, you've purchased shares and so on and so forth, there must be a disclosure that this organization has actually been compromised, because how do you make a decision whether to continue to engage with that organization or not? And you imagine you have been investing for 20 or so years in a particular corporation, and they have lost significant amounts of money in cybersecurity. If you don't know as a stakeholder, you're at risk. So best practice is for these organizations to disclose every time they experience that kind of breaches. Of course, it comes with repercussions to them because they will lose their reputation and so on and so forth. But it's only right and fitting for us, the people who are stakeholders, to know when we are at risk. That's one of the major motivations that I would encourage. I mean, why I would insist on guys coming clean when they get hacked. You also asked about what opportunities exist for businesses today, and as far as cybersecurity is concerned, not every organization is going to have access to, maybe say the likes of William or myself or so on. So I what they call managed security services, something that can actually reach people with maybe limited skills, limited personnel, and so on and so forth. I think one of my colleagues talked about a law firm that has maybe 1 or 2, 3 users. Those guys still have a need for cybersecurity, but how do they access it? How do they access their awareness and training? I think we need to customize the solutions for entities, whether small or large. So if you're looking at creating a business opportunity in that space, maybe you could consider how you can serve the different market segments that we have in the region. Yeah, I think that's what I can read.
So again, briefly but fast on all those. So the issue of publicity of attacks, I just don't think I'll differ with my colleague here a little bit. I don't think our market has the awareness to actually be able to process this information well. So I would rather you share it within a certain circle that benefits from it, rather than going out and saying so and so has been compromised. It will cause more damage than it might be, because a lot of people will not understand you've been hacked. In a lot more mature markets, there's enough regulation, enough processes to be able to address that. There's the issue of virtual cards. I think I'll let someone else answer that one. There's the issue of top attacks. Funny enough, whatever Bright told you was on point. This is my list of, it's actually the list. The only thing he missed out on my list was the database attacks. We are getting people who are very good at targeting databases. So it's another area that you now need to start protecting your databases. On the issue of, there was another issue of opportunities. There are so many opportunities in cybersecurity. It's so many opportunities. The only problem is everyone chasing them is so impatient, want to make quick money. There are so many opportunities to a point where we've gotten it easy, but you need to have you need to be consistent and to know where you're headed. As a developer, there's DevOps. When you see Amazon coming here or Microsoft coming here, they're not coming here just for development. They're also looking for somebody who can be able to develop security for all those. When we lose all our staff members, they're going into small boutique organizations that are working for firms in India and all these places. There is cyber insurance. There's risk quantification. There's threat hunting. There is this. The problem is a lot of our Gen Zs are coming in. They want quick money. They want to get 400 and within 2 years. They want to become CISOs. 50,000 at a very senior level. But unless you go through that, there's nothing. So there are opportunities, but be ready to toil. Because of that, CIO I told you in that microfinance, you'll spend 3 years talking to him and he'll never give you anything. The last one is that pricing index. I don't think there's a pricing index. The thing about innovation in these innovative areas, you don't want to regulate too much. And when you think about even that ICT thing that I go, look at your value, because Keroka, and they told me, so I was like, why did you stop? And then they said we lost 5 million. Saying we lost 5 million in one of our transactions. Immediately, until they fix, they're not going to continue, and that's a business decision. And you blame them? No. Somewhere. Thank you.
All right. So I think I'll take the interesting one on virtual currency and CBDCs. Now, history of money. Let's go back, and Wanamuya will keep me honest, Fidelis, if I'm telling the truth. So, you know, we initially used to have the barter trade, right? But then fast forward, it was not applicable universally. There was also issues on perishability, because if you take mangoes for Nene, you could not store it for long, right? So what happened? They came up now with a fiat currency. And how fiat currency works is ideally you have a regulator that defines the value of that money. Are we together? So today, what we have money is fiat currency. It's regulated, it's backed by the regulator, and the price for any currency today, like for instance, Kenya, how do we assess the value of the Kenya shillings? It's based on the dollar, right? Right? And what do we base the value of the dollar against? Come on, answer me. Yeah? It's gold. Yeah? Reserve gold. Yeah. So, and the thing is this, gold is that medium of value that it can store value for so long, right? So that has been the norm. But now comes in cryptocurrency, that this is not federated by a regulator. On very complex algorithms, it's finite in nature. And the issues now, that's where they come in. Number one, and of course it's anonymous. You cannot trace how it's moving and all that, right? And that is where the issues now come in, the volatility. Like gold, you know, 1 Bitcoin today is equivalent to around 2.5, 2.4 million Kenya shillings, right? But then I think a year ago, it was around 10.5 million. So the volatility is too, I mean, it's ridiculous, because for you to have a medium legal tender, there also has to be considerations on, is it stable enough to maintain even an economy? So that is why the Bitcoin conversation doesn't go very, very well because of that. And then the other second thing is applicability. When we talk about even, go to Darknet, and I've been there, ask Bright, ask William. These guys would ask you for certain things. They can sell, you know, if you want a bazooka, Darknet, you'll find it. And I'm not giving ideas. Yeah. There's one scary thing I saw one day I was researching, that they were selling cannibal meat. It's a wicked world, cannibal meat. And there's another one that they were hitmen for hire. If you want to kill your mother-in-law, if you wanted to, I'm just using it as an example. For you to be bloody and messy, pay them $20,000. But if you want them to do it neatly with a suicide note, it's $40,000, right? So applicability of Bitcoin is where some of these questions now come. Are we together? Now comes in because the future of currency and money is virtual. We cannot run away from that. And let's be very frank, that is the future of currency. It's going to move into that digital space, right? Hence, now regulators, what they're doing is now they're coming with their own federal-backed currency, the CBDCs and the other variants, FedCoin, name it, yeah? So that is the future. And the only thing that they're saying we're going to do different is that we are going to still have these controls, not to make it too volatile. Number two, things like AML. Remember, the second point, applicability, right? Because in Kenya, the capital markets and the money space, that regulation normally helps in curbing some of these crimes. You'll ask Andy, he will tell you the same thing. So we need to strike a balance, and that is where CBDCs come. So where we stand, like I said earlier, we happen to be lucky because we have a forward-thinking regulator, Central Bank of Kenya. They're obviously thinking about this, and that is why they're inviting even comments to see, is it something that we can pilot? Because when you look even in the more advanced worlds, this is pretty much not only the now, but also the future. So to answer your question, that is the main difference between crypto and CBDCs. And the issues when we talk about, particularly within the context of cybersecurity, because it's fueling some of these crimes that we have. I happened to one day listen to the deputy governor of CBK, Sheila Mbijiwe, and what she said is that the only reason CBK have a problem with crypto, particularly the Bitcoins and all these Cardano and all these other variants, is that applicability. It's going to undo years and years and years of AML. I know we sit on different divides on the same, and even as techies, yes, we want to advocate Bitcoin. Some of the people here are investors. Unfortunately, some people have lost a lot of money. The early entrants are the guys who were able to cash out, big time. So that is the biggest issue that they face, as well as the volatility, like I mentioned. A friend of mine works for this company in Japan. It's called Cardano. Cardano, when they did the IPO, that is when people made a lot of money. But even including the investors in that inner circle, they're actually going to alternative investments. Why? Because now it's not really as lucrative anymore. FYI, I'm not a financial expert. I come from Mount Kenya. Anything that touches on money, And the question, I think Makatiani has answered very, very well, spot on. On the pricing, it's very hard to regulate. But what I can say is that particularly for people who want to understand what the right price needs to be, particularly for some of these solutions, some of this information, you'd be surprised, it's out in the public domain. The licensing costs, you'd ideally know. If you're talking about the Gartner players, the vendors who are there, you just need to invest time to research and such information you can find. But also what I find very important, particularly as us, is we need to share information as an industry. Yeah, and have caucus where if you're ahead of IT, you want to invest maybe in a certain application, you need to have the numbers of the other people within the market who can tell you and give you insights so that we don't have such exploitation. So it cannot be regulated, but the information you can find.
Okay, thank you. As I close the panel for you guys, what I'd like to say is that when it comes to opportunities, we should remember that there are challenges and opportunities that are unique to Africans and Kenyans. So as techies, as much as we rely on Western best practice and what seemed to happen or what worked out there, what I would ask for, even from a researcher's perspective, is that we come up with content that actually speaks to what drives us as Africans when it comes to the use of technology, when it comes to dealing with challenges that we face online. Not saying that technology is not global and what works in the Western or the Eastern world can't work for us, but there's some things, there's some customs that dictate how we behave. And once we get to understand that, we might be able to better address challenges that are facing us on the online platform. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So that marks the end of our, beautiful, beautiful panel. I would like us to at least give them a very beautiful clap and stand ovation. It's fine. Just wait, you're not giving them a standing ovation. You did so well. Let's try this again. Yeah. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know organizers, 4 of them have come here and told Judy, just close down. Okay, so we are done. Oh yeah. Please, do stand here. Oh yeah. So after this, you're kindly asked to move to the 9th floor for the alcohol. Oh, I mean cocktail. Sorry, you